I'm briefly going to speak about an EU petition called Protect the EU's Rural Heritage, Food Security and Supply. There we are. So first of all, what is a European Citizens Initiative? It's a very special type of petition because it's an official EU petition. And that comes with a couple of cons. For example, you can only sign it if you are a European citizen. But the big plus of it is that when it's successful, the EU has an obligation to respond. Where a regular petition maybe might get a response, this one, there's a guarantee that the European Commission will give you a response. And this is part of a growing trend. This mechanism, the ECI, has been around for about 10 years now. But it's only in the last 4 or 5 years that we've really seen it pick up, not just with citizens engaging with these petitions, but also in the way that politicians observe them and interact with them themselves. And on the right of the screen, you'll see a QR code. That QR code will be on each of the next slides, and it will take you to the petition website. So what is this petition about? Well, in a nutshell, it's about standing up for rural and food-producing communities. To break it down into two main segments, there's the idea of protecting rural heritage, cultural tradition, and then there's the idea of ensuring food security for the future. Not in the idea of making sure there's enough food in our supermarkets, but in the idea of having that food grown on European soil. And the reason these two different ideas have come together is that they tend to impact the same communities. So, for example, when it comes to heritage, what we often see is that young people who are the ones that learn the rural tradition, the ones that adopt decades or even centuries worth of practice, often feel that they have to move to cities, not because they want to, but because there's a lack of opportunity where they grew up. And that's not their fault or the community's fault. That's the lack of government incentive and investment pushed into those areas. And it's actually very similar on the food security, the agricultural front, because the young people in rural areas often cannot afford the initial costs of setting up to be a farmer, even if that's their chosen profession. And they also have to deal with crazy levels of uncertainty around climate change and the future of the land that they will be using. This is reflected in the numbers. For example, only 11% of our farmers in the EU are under the age of 40, whereas 60% are over 55 years old. That's a huge age bracket difference. So what we're asking for is for more EU investment into rural areas so that rural traditions can stay alive and they can be passed on to future generations. Because this isn't happening just one or two places. If it were, you might be able to say that is the way history goes. Things evolve, things change, some things get lost to time. But what we're seeing now is different. What we're seeing is every country of Europe, almost all local areas, suffering from this burden. And we're asking for more EU attention and more EU investment and further enhanced consultation with local rural representatives to make sure these laws and investments go really where they're needed. So, how are we doing this petition? Well, we have several industry partners and they have proven very helpful in getting it out to their members. So we have about 13 in total, those logos just amongst some of them. But we're also using agricultural fairs and community fairs where we can meet people from local communities, introduce the problems, which they often agree with, and sign. We're also using local magazines and newsletters to get our reach out. So what am I here asking for? Well, first of all, you can sign. You can encourage your friends, your family, and your colleagues. But more importantly, I know many of you here today are representing organizations. And your organization can really be part of this movement. We'd ask that you share the petition link in your newsletters, your social media, but really connect with your members through this petition. We know, like this event, there are events all across Europe all the time. We have flyers, we have graphics, and I would ask if you're interested and you feel passionate about this subject, please get in touch with me. I would love to have more people on this petition. And that way, you can highlight these issues to the EU institutions to bring more investment to rural areas. So thank you very much for that brief interlude. That is my email address on the screen. And I would encourage you all to get in touch with me, and together we can get this petition over the goalposts and influence EU legislation and investment to rural areas. Thank you very much for your time.